Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, the Buckeye Extra Podcast with Rob Oller, Bill Rabinowitz, and Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Buckeye Extra Football Podcast. It's February 1st. I'm Joey Kaufman, joined by Bill Rabinowitz and Rob Oller. We're going to talk about Ohio State's month of January, which included a pretty impressive haul of transfers who were made available to us and other media members around this week. So we got to hear from them for the first time since they've been on campus. We touched on a little bit about all the arrivals of Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins, but the big name they brought in a couple weeks ago was Caleb Downs, safety from Alabama. We're just going to kind of look back and talk about the last month and sort of the offseason for Ohio State. I think about a month ago, things were pretty dire around Columbus. They're coming off the Cotton Bowl loss. See, Michigan won a national championship, but it's early in the offseason. But right now, Ohio State looks to be winning the offseason, sort of the offseason, the January champions, the offseason champions, maybe a preseason 1 or number 2 team. So optimism has certainly changed around these parts.
Well, it is a much different feel than it was after the Cotton Bowl. That was about as dispiriting a performance as you could have. Not just that they lost 14-3, but that you learned nothing good, nothing at all really, or nothing good about your quarterback situation, because Devin Brown, the hope would go in there and light it up. He gets hurt early, was ineffective before that. They have to turn to Lincoln Kienholz. They lose 14-3. It just was like, where do they turn from here? And you had all those underclassmen that we were hearing, the tea leaves were pretty promising about them coming back. But, the lure of the NFL is always stronger than people give it credit for. And so there was a lot of skepticism that a lot of those guys would come back. Well, they did, except for Marvin Harrison and Mike All Jr. They all did come back. And then, as you said, Joey, the haul that they got in the transfer portal is pretty impressive. For Quinshon Judkins, and a 2-time All-SEC running back to come to Ohio State when TreVeyon Henderson is here, that says something. And they probably have the best running back duo in the country now, especially if they can stay healthy. And that's been an issue for TreVeyon. Caleb Downs was the best transfer available anywhere, right? He was the highest rated, period. And you got your quarterback, Will Howard. You may not have the kind of the blue chip background of Ohio State quarterbacks recently, but he's proven. He's a good leader. He can run. I think he's what they need, especially. You just couldn't go into the offseason with Devin Brown as your incumbent quarterback and having to count on him. He can still compete, and we'll see how it plays out in the spring. But I don't think that Ryan Day could go into that. With Devin Brown as the clear number 1.
Yeah, the MVP of January might be Nick Saban. His departure.
It happen to him.
It opened the door. Well, I think McLaughlin was already
He was, McLaughlin was already in the portal. So he was, when Nick Saban announced his retirement, he was not in the room where it happened in Tuscaloosa.
But you got down, and we haven't even mentioned saying, who's like the number 1 quarterback prospect, or he was, right? I think he was number 1, number 4 overall or something like that, just in terms of talent. They're comparing him to Mac Jones a little bit. I saw one comparison that was kind of, he's not a super runner. Again, he's true freshman coming in. He probably won't get the job unless he's unbelievable. And even then, to beat out the guy who's done it for 4 years in Howard, that would be a tall task. And we even talked about Aaron Noland either. Where does Aaron Noland fit in this? But it was quite a haul. As I wrote yesterday, that for Ryan Day, it's like not that it's almost hard to believe the expectations could get higher at Ohio State, but now it's like, well, there are people out there like, well, of course we'll win. We better win the national title. And that's a little extreme. It's harder to do than just snapping your fingers and having a good January of recruiting and transfer portal. But it did raise the expectations. And I kind of think that there's no reason they shouldn't beat Michigan. There's no reason they shouldn't win the Big Ten. And there's no reason they shouldn't at least win a game or two in the playoff, just off paper based on January.
Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, if they lose to Michigan next year, it's Armageddon. I mean, Michigan's, they lost Harbaugh, they lost McCarthy, they're going to lose most of the nucleus of that team. The game's in Columbus. That is a must-win, except for the fact that it's not a must-win the way it was last year, because you do have a 12-team playoff and there would be potential redemption. But if you lose that game in Columbus and you don't get another crack at Michigan in the playoff, it's I can't even imagine the reaction here. I don't know that that's survivable. But look, right, Robo, they have, I think you used the analogy, the poker analogy, they push their chips to the middle of the table, all in. Well, it is all in the sense that they're making a run for it. It's not all in the sense that if they lose, the program is done. I mean, they're not eliminated, but they are certainly not sitting back. They're being very aggressive. And you compare what they got last year for the transfer portal. They got some players. Davis Benosin was a very good transfer. Josh Simmons played left tackle for him. But you're talking about a whole different level of player that they're getting this year.
Yeah, something you said, just it's all speculative. But if they would lose to Michigan next year, first of all, you said Armageddon. I'm not sure they get a shot at the playoff. Because if they lose,
right.
I mean, they could
lose to Oregon, Penn State, whoever else before
they could lose. And actually, you could. I know we've talked about if you lose 2, you're in, and that's probably true. But if you lose 2 and one's to a bad Michigan, let's say a not great Michigan, well, the winner of the Big Ten championship game and the loser of the Big Ten championship game are probably in ahead of Ohio State. If Ohio State's not in, this isn't the West versus East anymore, where you've got a Northwestern or a Purdue. You've got the 2 best teams in the. Why would you take an Ohio State over the 2 best teams, even the loser of the Big Ten championship game? So you've got to really assure yourself of making the playoff. I think absolutely assure yourself. You have to make it to the Big Ten championship game.
But you also don't have the Pac-12 anymore, so it's 2 main conferences. And the Big 12, which is weakened because Texas and Oklahoma are no longer there.
I get that. I'm just saying to assure yourself, because I think the 2 teams in the Big Ten championship game make it more often than not. Oh yeah, it's always.
Oh, certainly.
If you don't make it, there's no guarantee, and that's not even saying what happens at Penn State. If you lose 3 and one of them's Michigan, you're not getting in the playoff.
It's February 1st. No, but already outlining playoff scenario.
Right. I'm going to disaster scenarios. Look, Ohio State is probably, Joey, tell me if you agree, they're going to be, I would guess, number 2 behind Georgia, and there's a chance they could be number 1 preseason. I think it's Georgia and Ohio State pick the order, and then probably Oregon. I don't even know what Alabama's got left.
Yeah, Georgia having Carson Beck probably gives them a slight edge over Ohio State. But
Oregon could sneak ahead of them. Could
they do at the quarterback spot? I think Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback. So that's certainly right now. It looks like Ohio State at Oregon could be the game of one of the games of the year in college football. Yes, October game in Autzen. It's a good thing you guys have already booked your travel. Your a bed and breakfast. And
we have not. I actually looked it up. You can't book a hotel, or you can't book a flight yet. It's not, at least on Southwest you can't. But we did book our hotel.
Don't worry. If you can't get a flight, it's a drivable trip.
Remember,
if you leave Monday
4 years ago. We were supposed to go out there 4 years ago, and COVID ended that.
Anyhow, it was a nice way for Ryan Day to get the attack dogs off him. Now, I'm not sure that a lot of people have changed their mind about his ability to take you all the way, but it helped his cause to have the January he had, for sure. It's quieted everything. You guys said that. I mean, the Cotton Bowl was an embarrassment. It doesn't get much worse than that. And bringing in, we haven't talked about Bill O'Brien, have we?
No.
Bringing in Bill O'Brien as the OC, especially with what's happening in college football. I don't know if you guys agree. I saw Jeff Hafley is leaving Boston College to become the DC at the Green Bay Packers. I'm not sure I totally believe. I haven't heard him say it. A lot of people are speculating, he's just, it's no fun to coach in college anymore, so he's jumping to the pros. Well, maybe, but the other side is he was 6-6 and he was kind of stuck. So maybe you jump. But regardless, Ryan Day, I think, as he had hinted for at least a year, was looking at becoming more of a CEO type of guy. And I'm not sure that's his preference. It probably isn't. I think he likes to play chess, on offense and call plays, but had to bring in somebody with NIL, with the transfer portal, with collective, with all the things that's going on. Ryan Day, whether he likes it or not, kind of has to keep his eye on that stuff and probably do less coaching, maybe, in a sense, at least off the field. So I think that's a big get for them, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, I talked to the two Penn State quarterbacks who played for him back in the day, Christian Hackenberg and Matt McGloin, two very different quarterbacks. And I mean, McGloin was a fifth-year senior when O'Brien took over right after the Sandusky scandal, and then Hackenberg won the job as a true freshman. And so two different perspectives, and they both raved about him. O'Brien, like most coaches who've been around a while, has had success and failure. He was the offensive coordinator of the Patriots last year, and the Patriots were awful. I think that's much more a result of the Patriots having not much talent on offense than Bill O'Brien not knowing how to, call a game. But, Bill O'Brien's a respected guy in the game. He's got experience. He's coached under Nick Saban at Alabama. He coached under Belichick in New England. Ryan Day wanted a guy that he could kind of do with the offense what he did with Jim Knowles in the defense. Say, here's, it's your baby. I will be around. And obviously he'll be much more around on offense because that's his expertise. But he doesn't have to worry about calling what's 2nd and 8 against Indiana. I mean, that's what he kind of had to do. I mean, Brian Hartline was the offensive coordinator last year, but didn't call plays. You had a quarterbacks coach and Corey Dennis that, was inexperienced. Now he's got a guy who has done everything. And we'll see how it plays out. But on paper, this was, I think in Ryan Day's mind, it was a home run hire.
It's quite a change from a year ago where you had Corey Dennis, your quarterbacks coach, and Kyle McCord and Devin Brown competing for a job. Now you have a new quarterbacks coach, play caller, and Bill O'Brien, and a new quarterback and Will Howard. Day has sort of been very hands-on with that group, and now he has a little more of a veteran presence at quarterback and more experience at the position coach coordinator level as well. We got to talk. We haven't talked to any of the new coaches yet. We did talk to the players, and it was interesting to sort of get a feel from these guys in a public setting, especially Will Howard. He's got a certain Rob. I think you were around Will Howard's table as well on Tuesday, but he's got some polish. He's got some presence. He feels like an older, mature guy. That was sort of the impression that I came with from hearing it from him. And McCord was a lot more understated. They talked about how he sort of was even keeled. Howard seems a little louder, at least in front of a microphone.
Yeah, I would kind of put Howard from just, the 15 minutes or 20 minutes we had with him, polished, positive. I would put him like somewhere between McCord and Devin Brown in personality, just in the little things I saw. Devin Brown, very up, very exuberant, and McCord kind of flatliner level. Seemed like Will Howard was in between the two. I was impressed. Said the right things, didn't seem paranoid, didn't seem at ease. Again, he's done this a long time, so that matters. He may have not had the media at Kansas State that he's going to have at Ohio State, but whether it's 2 people you're talking to or 20, in a way, I guess that doesn't matter. I was just impressed with the whole crew. I didn't get to talk to McLaughlin or the tight end, the OU kid, but I got yeah. So, but I heard he was good. I heard he was. When I say good, of course, from on our side of the window, that always means that they're good talkers.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It just means that they can carry themselves well. They can articulate things. That they're just good. I don't want to say good people. You talk to somebody for 20 minutes, we don't know, what's going on really with them. But they came across as solid, said the right things, and polished.
We split it up so that like Joey and Rob talked to Will Howard and Seth McLaughlin, I think, and I talked to Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins, and I can say similarly positive things about my first impressions of those guys. Caleb Downs, again, the number 1 rated transfer in the country, came across as very down to earth, very humble, hardworking. His brother is in the NFL. His uncle was Dre Bly, who was a star cornerback. His dad played at NC State. So, he's not, he's a football guy. It's a little bit like Sonny Styles. When guys who come up with relatives in the game, they're just different. I mean, they're just a kind of a maturity to them, I guess. Or
they get it.
We saw with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right.
Marvin Harrison, of course. So I was impressed with Caleb Downs. Just somebody said, "Do you think you're like the missing piece of the puzzle?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going. No, I'm just a piece of the puzzle." And there didn't seem to be much ego to him. And confidence, yes. And Quinshon Judkins, I was really impressed with. I mean, I really didn't know anything about him at all. I knew, he's from Mississippi, went to Ole Miss. I wondered how, in body language, how he would react to the questions about sharing the load with Travion Henderson. And he's all in about that. And he had 2 years of being the workhorse, carrying the ball a ton at Ole Miss. I think he welcomes sharing the load. And that's in vogue now in college and pro football. Look what the Detroit Lions did with David Montgomery and Gibbs. And look what Michigan did with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I think the days of a running back carrying the ball 25 times a game all the time is I don't say it's past, because that's what Judkins did, but I think that's going to be more an exception than the rule. And I asked him, I said, "How will you feel if there's a game and you get 10 carries?" He said, "As long as I contribute, fine." I mean, he just seemed to be a very friendly, non-jaded. That was the other thing. You kind of thought maybe these guys are just pure mercenaries, chasing the NIL money or whatever. I didn't get that sense from any of them. I mean, both of them said the NIL was not a factor. It had to have been some, but it wasn't. If you talk to them, it was not the main factor.
With Judkins, the thing I find interesting about his background is he ran the ball a lot at Mississippi. In his first 2 years there, he combined for 545 carries. I believe it was 271.
That's 100. Well, by the way, that's 100 more than Henderson had in 3 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was only 5 guys in the country ran the ball more than he did last year. And probably in a perfect world, if there were no limitations on when guys could declare for the draft, you wonder if somebody like that has that much of a track record would just go pro. And he's got probably enough game tape. What do you stay in a game by staying around in college? But he has to stay in college. And so if you have to stay for another year, why subject yourself to more miles? Why put in another 250 carry season with the NFL around the corner? So I think this is probably a more manageable workload for him is probably not the worst thing for his long-term interest. Plus, you get to factor into a team that should be in a national championship race. Ole Miss has been pretty good. But, I mean, Robbie, we were talking to him afterwards, and Quinshon was saying that 11-1 at Ole Miss is like the best season they've ever had. And everyone's talking about that. And here you go at Ohio State, you go 11-1. People are mad. So I think he was sort of enamored by that as well. But I think a more managing workload overall had to be a sell for him to come here and sort of split carries with Travion.
Yeah, 11-2 last year, Ole Miss, and that's the first time they've ever had 11 wins.
Right.
Right. and so, I think I asked the first question about, why'd you come here? And he said, well, it's got great coaches, it's got great players, it's got the best fan base in the country. I mean, he just went on and on and on. And, I was surprised by how quickly and how fully he kind of embraced everything Ohio State. Because again, this is a guy who is from Mississippi, played at Ole Miss, had to take all kinds of, from the fan base when he left. I mean, he was their homegrown star, and he leaves for, Ohio. And so, but he just seemed very happy. I mean, all these guys seem very happy to be at Ohio State, and I didn't get any kind of, I'm here as a mercenary feel from any of those guys.
They all had a presence about them that they, maybe it's just because they're transfers and they've been around the block for a little bit in college football, but they all felt pretty mature players who handled themselves well. It felt like picking up an NFL free agent or something like that, where just some guys who have some experience and know college football at that point. And they're going to be much older than they've been. I was updating my scholarship chart that I keep track of. The guys, they're going to have 19 seniors this year, which is more than they've had the last few years. They're going to have 26 guys who are in their 4th, 5th, or 6th seasons. So over 30% of the rosters are guys who are seniors in school, at least, either redshirt juniors or above. That's different than what they've had. And that was sort of the formula that Michigan used to win a national championship. Washington was a much older team last year. I think that matters quite a bit, because you have more experience, and it's a talent experience is obviously a good mix.
So
Ohio State's always been. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say that's always been the key. But so who's the most important or the most impacting of the 5 or 6 guys? What was it, 5 or 6 of the transfers?
Five.
I mean, I would argue, first of all, Chimney Chekwa, I saw this on Twitter, former DB, and I kind of agree with him. That Bill O'Brien might be the best, most important pickup for them going.
Are we kind of doing a coach's category or a player?
No, I'm setting him aside.
Okay.
He might be the overall best, but this is a tough one because it's always about the quarterback. But
yeah,
I was thinking Judkins. I mean, that's it, Judkins, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
they're going in with Travion, who is a good back, but is not, with his injury issues. What's your Dallin Hayden? That's your only other option, which we don't really know much about Dallin Hayden. What we've seen, we've liked, but that's been a mystery in terms of why he hasn't played more. But if you don't bring in that guy, you're down to one back. Oh man, I don't know. That's dicey. Again, quarterback's always most important. So you could say Will Howard, but what we don't know for certain, for 100% certain, what we know is Judkins he can play. That guy can run. I mean, and he's a running back. What you don't know about Will Howard is just how good he is. I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed bag with him. The one thing I've said is, and Bill mentioned it, he at least he's got some running ability. He can
which tickles Rob's fancies.
Absolutely. Well, he can extend plays. I mean, you watch J.J. McCarthy, who I don't think was great, but what made him special for that team was the ability to extend plays. That's what it's about. So maybe Will Howard. I think the best player might be the safety out of Alabama, but they were so stacked already on defense that he is just sort of another piece to the puzzle.
I think you could make a case for really any of those 3 guys we've talked about: Downs, Judkins, Howard. I think Downs might be the best.
McLaughlin. What about McLaughlin?
That's an area of need. I think with Downs too, he's probably in terms of the best pure talent that they added through the portal. Who will be picked the highest in the NFL draft? You'd probably pick him. I think he also is versatile enough to play multiple safety spots. He also helps at a position where you didn't have a ton of depth, but now you certainly have another piece to the puzzle there, and maybe even allows Sonny Styles to move to linebacker, which helps shore up a layer of the defense, which is probably the one spot that you lose, and you have some attrition, losing Tommy Eichenberg, your Steel Chambers. So he, I think, gives you just more flexibility in the back seven there.
I think Jim Knowles is thrilled to have Kalen Dowds because now he can really mix and match. Because you really have 12 starters on defense, essentially, because Sonny Styles is technically a safety. Well, so is Jordan Hancock technically a safety. And so they're two very different players, but they both kind of play in that slot position. Now you can mix and match. If it's passing down, you put this guy in. If it's a running down, you put this guy in. You keep guys fresher. But I mean, I know this is crazy, but I could almost make the case, as somebody mentioned, that Seth McLaughlin might be, just because the center position was a weakness last year. I mean, no offense to Carson Hinsman. He played probably a year before they expected him to play when Luke Whippler went to the pros. But when you have a center who struggles, that's a huge deal. And assuming that Seth McLaughlin fixes his snapping issues, which I don't think were a long-term issue, just cropped up at the end of the year. He's a fifth-year senior. He started at Alabama. He's obviously a good player. And I think when you have a center who knows what he's doing and can really be a leader on the line instead of just trying to figure it out himself, it's huge what a difference it makes. And he's going to have Donovan Jackson next to him. You maybe move Josh Fryer inside, assuming that Luke Montgomery or Tegra Shavola can play right tackle. And all of a sudden, this line that was shaky last year looks a lot better. I mean, Josh Simmons should be considerably better in his second year at left tackle. So, I mean, I think the key to this season is the offensive line. And if they can get the offensive line to play at a level that Ohio State's used to, this is a really, really good team. But no offense is great if you have a bad offensive line. They scored 2 touchdowns fewer last year per game than they did in 2022. And a lot of that is, some of that is obviously losing C.J. Stroud, but a lot of that's the offensive line.
Yeah, I certainly think in terms of position of need that they needed to upgrade, offensive line was at the top of the list. I think I just want to reserve some judgment for how good McLaughlin could be when you factor in the snapping issues. But he was a good blocker. Didn't allow a lot of pressure. Didn't allow 1 sack in 3 years as Alabama's starting center. So certainly, I think he's going to be an upgrade for them. I just don't know how high the ceiling is yet. We'll see. Maybe he will be top the most impactful list. I think it's hard not to ultimately go with Will Howard though, just because of if they didn't bring in Will Howard, you look at Devin Brown's injury history. He was hurt 3 times last year. The pinky at the end of spring ball, the first ankle in October, the other ankle in the Cotton Bowl. You just wondered about his durability. If they didn't have Will Howard, and then you have 3 freshmen you're picking between to start. That doesn't put you in a really advantageous position to make a run of the college football, because you look at all the guys who were quarterbacking playoff teams. It was Quinn Ewers and J.J. McCarthy who were juniors. It was Michael Penix Jr. who had been around the block certainly for a few years in college football. I think the hope with Will Howard is, by the numbers at Kansas State, it wasn't especially gaudy, but they were pretty good. I mean, last year was the first time he completed more than 60% of his passes in his career. I think what you were hoping for is a situation like Penix or Bo Nix at Oregon, where they were solid but not always consistent at their pass stops, and they transfer and sort of as they're at that super senior, when they're a super senior, the last year of eligibility, they really take off. And I think that's what probably Ohio State is hoping for Will Howard, to get him a better supporting cast, get him in a better structure overall, and have him take a leap. That's what they're hoping for.
Remember, Devin Brown got hurt in pregame against Michigan State or somebody. I mean, Minnesota.
It was Michigan State.
It was actually 4, right?
He aggravated the same injury. He had been recovering from the ankle injury. Then he hurt it again, and you could just sort of hear Day at the press conference the following Tuesday, just sort of perplexed about the whole thing and saying, maybe let's not do that next time.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
I'm not counting Devin Brown out entirely.
I didn't mean to. I don't mean as a total knock, but I think just that's what happened last year. He just got hurt repeatedly,
Right.
and the style he plays at, you were just vulnerable to not having another option. If you were putting all your chips with Devin Brown, and I don't know if they could afford to do that, just based on his track record and based on the injury history.
Put him and Trevion in a padded room. I think there's still an injury between the two of them.
You had to go there. You had to go.
How about this?
That's why they hate us.
How many?
The spring game, the spring practice is going to be interesting in terms of quarterback, because just talking to people, it seems like if it's Will Howard, and I know burn the ships, I know Devin Brown says he's here to stay, and maybe he is, but if you know you're not the guy, and then you've got these freshmen coming up behind you who are highly touted, I could see Devin Brown entering that portal, and probably maybe Lincoln Keenholz too. I don't know if that's a prediction, but I think we can all kind of see that as a distinct possibility.
Yeah, well, let's see how the spring plays out. They'll know.
Well, that's what I said.
Spring, they'll know. They'll know.
That's what I said.
Part of the calculation, I'm sure, for Brown and Keenholz will be how Noland and Sayan look behind them, because Will Howard's only going to be the starter at Ohio State, but at most one season. So if you're in Devin Brown's position, you have 3 years of eligibility left in college football. You could wait and 1 year behind Will Howard and be the backup, but you have to be sure you can be the starter in 25. So that'll be the dilemma for Devin Brown.
I would agree with that, but one thing Bill mentioned earlier, and it's an interesting little tidbit, is that Bill O'Brien was not afraid to start Hackenberg as a true freshman at Penn State.
Freshman. Yeah,
So
but he also didn't have many
I
options.
know that, I know, but he's got a history. Some coaches would be absolutely not. We'll play some other guy before we do that, and he played a true freshman, a highly touted. If you remember, Hackenberg was
He was a 5-star guy.
Yeah. So, going into, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but going into the 2025, those freshmen, I don't know. We'll see.
A quarterback in college football is a year-to-year proposition.
It absolutely
There's almost no point in even looking ahead to 25.
May not even be year to year. It might be portal to portal.
Well, maybe. But I mean, would anyone have said a year ago the quarterback for Ohio State 2024 is going to be Will Howard? I mean, that just seemed like, who? I mean, there was no way. But that changes so fast.
Well, especially now.
They were tired of having Mo Howard, who went to Syracuse. Oh boy, that won't even resonate with the younger.
We're shaking our heads. This is an audio podcast. We're shaking our heads though. We're on Zoom.
And we're not. Mo Howard for Will Howard. I think that's an upgrade.
Yeah, explain who Mo Howard was.
No, we don't need to. What were you going to say, Joey?
I'm now waiting to learn about Mo Howard.
Do you know who Mo Howard is?
No.
One of the Three Stooges.
Well, I know by his last name.
Do you know the Three Stooges? Have you heard of the Three Stooges?
I do know the Three Stooges.
Curly
and Curly Joe.
For the record, I was pro Kyle McCord until I wasn't.
Well, I'm glad that's duly noted.
That's always what AD say about the coaches. They always support the coaches until they no longer support the coaches.
You gave the vote of confidence, the dreaded Rob Oller vote of confidence.
I liked Will Howard. I liked, like we've already covered it. Joey nailed it. They just sort of have a presence. All these guys they brought in. Now we didn't get Sayan.
No, he's a freshman.
Well, right. But
still and he's a transfer in technicality, but I think in spirit they see him as a freshman.
Yeah,
he is a freshman.
Yeah. So
I don't know if he changes your calculus for 24.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I think that just about does it. We didn't even talk about the Jim Harbaugh stuff, which is
gone. He's gone.
I would say the two biggest, the two biggest things that happened for Ohio State in January were probably Nick Saban retiring and Jim Harbaugh leaving. Saban, because his retirement allowed Caleb Downs to transfer to Ohio State, and Jim Harbaugh obviously lives a big hole in Ann Arbor and changes the rivalry. So a lot of news, a lot of changes elsewhere that have affected.
We like change. We like change in this business.
Something new to write about always.
Yep.
There is never a shortage of things to write about at Ohio State.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and joining the Buckeye Extra podcast. Stay tuned to dispatch.com for more coverage throughout the year, Ohio State content. I was Rob was going to say something. Goodbye. And Rob seemed like he was itching to. Goodbye, everyone.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.
Just going to run this dog to see if we can find any type of human remains that are left.
Listen to Where Secrets Go to Die, The Disappearance of Derek Hennigan. From the Detroit Free Press, a new podcast set in the woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Available on Apple, Spotify, Freep.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.